Good morning and welcome to the 2023 Boulder Boulder. We are just about a minute away from the start of the wheelchair division. I'm here, my name is Alan Culpepper, and I'm joined by Mr. Frank Shorter, who celebrated his 50th anniversary of winning his gold medal in 1972. Frank, it's a pleasure to be back with you again, and Frank's been a part of this race from the onset, so I'm excited to be here calling the race with you, Frank.
Alan, you developed yourself in Boulder as well. You're sort of the next generation. Now there's another generation after you, so it's always fun to come back and really participate in all the events. This really is the classiest 10K. Everything you could think of goes right and goes well.
Well, we've been blessed with a beautiful morning, so we're excited that we don't have the weather to contend with, and we have some 40,000 runners lined up and ready to begin this race that'll be taken to the streets. The waves will begin in about 5 minutes after the wheelchair division, and for over 2 hours we'll have waves that Mr. Steve Bosley, the creator, he was one of the pioneers of that wave start.
I think the wheelchairs are off. Watch them, and as you said with the day, this is the kind of day I describe as no excuses. If you had a goal of how well you were going to do and you didn't do it today, it wasn't because of the weather. I mean, it couldn't be better. And you can see in the wheelchair, right from the start, there's drafting, and it's evolved in this event where you want to get away. You don't want to let that person behind you because that man in the wheelchair is getting at least a 35 and maybe 40% energy saving by going behind. So the leader really isn't leading. He wants, if you're going to be in front, you have to be way in front.
Absolutely, and we'll do our best to pick out who's who out there. It gets a little tricky in the mornings when we are dealing with some of the sun glare and trying to find their bib numbers, but we will be feeding you as much information as we possibly can as we roll through this race. But we already have 2 individuals that have broken away, and which is not uncommon in these races. They tend to, you know, the leaders tend to assert themselves early, establish their own pace, and just for practical purposes, we have the wheelchairs go first for safety reasons as they're going significantly faster than anyone else, and so it makes sense to have a clear road in front of them.
And you also find out sometimes they're teammates. And as we watch here, it'll become apparent if one person's in the front and then he's going to go aside and then the other wheelchair comes through. And Alan, is just like in track and field and road racing, when you're racing like that, you can sort of send the signal by moving out a little bit to tell that person behind, okay, it's your turn. And here, you see, he's not drafting anymore. So you don't know. Maybe he's trying to bridge a gap, and that seems to be what he's doing.
It does. It looks like a little gap has already formed, and as you said, Frank, as they went around that turn, that's oftentimes when they'll see this opportunity to take a tangent or to seize the moment to break away a little bit, and that looks to be the case already, which we're very early into this race, but they will be they'll be out there significantly quicker, and so therefore, you know, it goes a lot faster, and drafting is a big part of that, so they're already past the 1K mark.
Yeah, 2:57 for 1K is fast. And they're just rolling along, and now he's got the lead, and it pretty much, it's over. I think that the race is over, and so we really do want to find out the number of the person who is leading. He just looks stronger, and he's not easing off. And we'll see how far what kind of lead he gets when he's surging, because what he's doing now, he's going much faster probably than he can run to the finish, wheelchair push to the finish. And when he eases off, see, he looked around, and when he eases off, it's a question of how well and quick he can recover, right?
Exactly.
And then push again. So now he knows he's got that lead, and now he's just going to try to maintain it.
That looks to be Tyler Byers, but we'll definitely confirm that as we go through this a little bit more so. But that looks to be Tyler Byers, who's already broken away and making a statement there early on in the race. There we have a nice shot of the start line. This year's official starter will be Mr. Rick Rojas. Excuse me, Rick was the very first winner of the very first Boulder Boulder. So, which Frank, you're familiar with that.
I know that. I was right behind him. Well, not right behind him. He had a very good day that day. And we finished in North Boulder Park.
Exactly.
And there was a tractor trailer up there, and that was the victory stand, and everybody had a good time. And I think in the history, part of this is the next year we finished at Boulder High School, the track, and then the University of Colorado came to us, the race, and said, how would you like to finish in the stadium? And so that really is why we're here.
And I believe that was in 1983, so it's definitely been a staple, and that's one of the things that's extremely attractive, not only for the everyday citizen who's running this race. Well, and there we go, A wave. So these individuals, even the banana suit, has had to qualify to be in this A wave. So they've had to post a time, submit that time to the Boulder Boulder to say, hey, I'm legitimate, I'm the real deal, and I deserve to be up in the front of the race, so within the first 1,000 people of the race. So they're gonna get going, and we're gonna have, there's always one, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Frank, you know, there's always one.
There's always one. And he'll last for a while.
Yep, he's getting exactly what he was hoping for on camera, you know?
Yeah, well, I think the only time we should mention his name is if he actually finishes. But the field, and you have to remember, we're at altitude, so you can't run quite as fast. The average pace will be less. But if you're altitude trained, you also develop this ability to run right at your threshold. And this threshold at altitude is a little slower, right?
Absolutely, yes.
But your training, you gain a sense of where that is, mainly through your interval training.
Correct.
And your races leading up. So the people who are going after him are still within themselves. And see, you can see this is starting to spread out. And what I love about this field is these people, it's sort of the proving ground. And you can move from here up into one of the teams. And today we have several people that have moved up from actually winning the citizens race and then ending up on an American team here.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that looks like Mr. Ian Butler up front, who has performed on the international team, professional team challenge, and he's a I know he's in the 213, 214 range for a marathoner, so he's a legitimate runner, absolutely.
Sure. And that's where we are. He's oh, you always have to just sort of wonder.
And we'll do our best, folks, to get an idea of their splits as we go so that we can have an anticipated finishing time as well, just so you get a sense of the type of pace per mile they're running.
Yeah, and they passed mile 1. See what their pace was?
Got it. Back to our wheelchair leader, who has a sizable lead. That looks to be like they're going up one of the hills. That's, oh, Frank, you're going to have to help me pick that out because we're 7 minutes in, so we're probably around the 3K mark.
Yeah, I think they're on Folsom now, heading up to Folsom Hill. It winds, and it should, right at the top, sort of curve around to the left, and it then levels off through the intersection there, and then gradually increases in altitude, but not much. And so that's probably where he is. He's between the 1 and 2 mile mark, and I think the 2 mile mark is right up on Folsom, just about when you make a left-hand turn to head west.
That's right. They'll make that left-hand turn onto Hawthorne, head back into those Boulder neighborhoods by Columbine Elementary School, kind of wind their way through those areas. So that's just past mile 2, so he should be making a left-hand turn here onto Hawthorne just momentarily. Back at the A wave, that is in fact Mr. Ian Butler. He trains out of Lakewood. He's very familiar with this race, has a unique running style. He's run and won the Fortitude race up in Fort Collins as well, and Ian is a tough competitor. He doesn't necessarily look the part. When he's out there though, he is very tough, and he's not afraid to lead.
He reminds me of the New Zealand runners of the 1970s. They were power runners, and he looked more to be a power runner than a form runner, and each is good. And Peter Snell, the great New Zealand who won gold medals in the 800 and 1500 meters, he was a power runner, and he kind of looked like that when he ran. He didn't push that right foot out when he came through, but it was very similar. Lots of motion.
And second there behind him, about 15 feet back, is Jared Ottman out of Broomfield. So Jared is also broken away. I guess what we'll see here, Frank, is it makes sense for the folks that are back in that pack that are able to work together a little bit more. Is it just a little early because they haven't even passed the mile mark? Is it a little early for Ian to be pushing like this, or you know, it is not unheard of to have someone right from the gun just break away and have their own race, but it's also not unheard of for them to be rolled up later on.
Well, it looks to me like he's not in any trouble at all, and he keeps easing away, and his effort seems to be the same. In other words, his cadence and his pace.
4:53 it looks like. I'm not sure if that's the official time on our clock, but very close. 4:53, 4:54 through the mile marker.
Oh, well, then I was mistaken. They haven't gotten out to Folsom yet. He'll go down here and make this right-hand turn, and now they're on Folsom. Now they're going to head up this hill, heading north.
Well, that's what they're battling. And you know, Frank, you mentioned the altitude, which is obviously we all that live and work and train here know that this is altitude. But there's also the course that they have to know and battle. And so there's enough undulation where it makes sense to know the course, especially if you're coming to be in the top 10 in the Citizens race, or you're obviously in the elite race. And they're battling each other, so it's all sorts of variables. When you are at sea level, you have that lack of variability where you can test yourself a little more, you can surge and recover a little bit more. Whereas at the altitude of Boulder, and with this type of course where there is enough undulation to throw you for a loop, they just have to be more careful, I guess, the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I think your point is correct in saying that it's not over yet, but this is a pretty big lead. When I was before, I have to say, I was looking at the wheelchair time when you asked me the question about moving up, you know, where he was.
Right. Well,
you got to be careful to watch the times here.
Well, and Jared Ottman is still hanging tough. He
looks good now.
He does, and that gap hasn't widened.
No.
So that's a good indicator that he's just found his rhythm and that they're both running an equal and even pace.
Yeah. Okay.
And we are getting some information on the women's race. Now bear in mind, the men and women all start together for this Citizens race. Later, as we bring to you the professional race, they start at separate times. But we're getting information that Kiki Vaughn and Molly Grabil are our two lead women. Kiki is actually in high school, and she's the daughter of Sarah and Brett Vaughn, who were both world-class runners. Sarah's still training and racing, just ran the Boston Marathon not too long ago, and Kiki is coming into her own. I saw her at the state meet last week, and she's a sub 5-minute miler for high school.
Wow. At altitude.
At altitude, absolutely.
There's the downhill. That's the first one.
So our wheelchair are 12 minutes in. Looks like they're still on, let's see if they've passed mile 2. So they're on 19th Street. So they just passed mile 3.
And that's a long downhill to the 3 there. I was going to say to the 3 mile mark.
Got it.
And it even goes beyond.
So they'll be making this right-hand turn here shortly. So they're coming up on halfway. Yeah, Frank, you know, navigating the turns is definitely more challenging, as the wheelchair athletes will attest. So it's just, you know, the road camber and any sort of undulation with the uncertainty of how smooth the roads are. I mean, these are very, very finely tuned machines, and so they feel every single bump. So, you know, back in these neighborhoods, when they're having to go right through the turns and cut those tangents, they're going to feel that a little bit more, right? But fortunately, he has a big enough lead that it's not an issue.
No, he's well ahead. I think the point on the turns is that, you know, we've heard about this doing something 10,000 times to sort of have it become innate. Well, you think about how many times these wheelchair athletes have gone around these corners and how they've just, my thought is they're not even thinking about it. It's just innate now. It just, they can feel it. It's become part of them. And so, again, in a way, they know what they're doing.
And these are those sneaky little hills that I was talking about back in the neighborhood. So they're on 17th Street. They'll make a left on Cedar. It's just sneaky. They're nothing crazy. You know, the highest point comes on 13th Street when they go just by the 4-mile mark. But those other ones back in those neighborhoods, I think, are the ones that sneak up on people.
Yeah.
Back to our citizens race, a wave. Ian Butler out in front, out of Lakewood, still looking strong. Looks like that lead has maybe widened just ever so slightly over Jared Ottman.
And he looks comfortable. He's good on the downhills. He's a good downhill runner.
He is. He looks smooth. Yeah, he looks comfortable. And we'll try and do our best again to get his additional splits, but it came through that first mile in under 5 minutes. And there's mile 2.
9:55.
So right about a 5-minute mile for number 2.
Yep. So that's a bit over 30 minutes, if I'm doing correctly in my mind.
Okay, so now we do have confirmation on our wheelchair leader, who is Howie Stanborn. So that's Howie. So Howie, sorry we weren't able to call you out sooner until after halfway through the race, but you know the way the bib numbers are pinned on, it's trickier to get a sense of who's who in the wheelchair, but just passing 6K, he's going to be making his way down 13th, and then up the last steep hill, I guess as you would put it, until we get to the stadium.
Yeah, at Casey Junior High, and that really is where you can see how much energy the runners have left. The way they go up that hill at Casey is very important. Because from the top there, it's really all downhill, down Pearl Street, back to Folsom, and the only climb left is that not so fun climb back up here to the stadium. But by the time you get there, it's right at the 6-mile point. So what would you think? It's just about a quarter of a mile from when you start up the hill.
Right.
To the finish.
Yeah, so I drove it with a few athletes yesterday, and they were like, "Oh, is that all?" These are some of the elite athletes that are in town. Gave them like a little course tour, and they were actually, I think, surprised at how short it was.
Yeah.
So it's more when it comes. The fact that it's at 4 miles is more the tricky part of it. You pass 4, and then you have this quarter-mile steep hill. I'm looking back on some of our results here and notes, and Ian Butler did actually win this race in the Citizens Race in 2019 in 30:55. So pacing-wise, he's about on that same pace.
Yeah, he's just on, like I said, just about 31 minutes.
So
he's even. He's not going to slow down that much.
And Ian's, you know, I recognize that he'd run this race before. The fact that he's won it knows that he understands what it takes to actually win and break away. And so Ian looks good. And here we are with Mr. Sanford.
That's the top of the hill at Casey Junior High. And now he's coming down into town, make that left-hand turn, and eventually get over to Pearl Street, head east, and then make a short left-hand turn to the 5-mile point, and then you get back on Folsom, head up towards the stadium.
Again, that's Howie Stanborn. Howie pulled away, I would say, after the 1K mark. So it was early on. It really has been no contest in that regard in terms of making a statement today. Howie's based in Colorado Springs. So
he's
one of the few that might come down a little bit in altitude from the Springs.
But here we go. I think these are our 2 winners here. And it's nice, and what's nice about these curves is you can just make a glance over your shoulder to see where you are. But I also think at a certain point in the race, you don't want to look around, and you just say, look, I'm going to go as hard as I can to the finish. And if they catch me, they catch me.
And getting a bit more information on our women's race, it looks like Molly Grabil is now pulling away, and so she's our clear leader right now. She'll be intermixed with some of the men in there, so it'll be harder to pick her out until she comes closer to the stadium, and then we'll have an idea of what her finishing time looks like. We'll try and get some splits to get an idea of what pace she's running, but from our understanding, she has pulled away.
Boy, he's very close to being able to draft there. They might, right? You can do it. There was a marathon in California once where the winner, and I was doing the commentary, and there was a pickup truck with the press, and he was like 5 feet behind the pickup truck going into the winds.
Close as you can get.
20 mile an hour wind, you didn't feel it.
Exactly. Well, you know, a couple years ago they got rid of the giant trailer that they used to use, and now they've gone to the pickup truck. And in the trailer, you know, it was tricky to navigate some of those turns, and so the runners knew to not really stay too close to it. But the pickup truck, I don't know, it would be a bit alluring if they were, especially on a windy day, I guess.
Oh yeah.
But we're looking at the flags right now. No wind at all. Beautiful temperature this morning. We'll see as we move closer to the professional race if the temperature creeps up into the mid-70s. I wouldn't say it'll be a big factor, but you know, obviously a bigger factor than at 7 a.m. when there's, you know, we're in the high 50s and it's crisp out and nice. So we'll see for the professional race. But overall, this has been, you know, this is perfect.
Couldn't be better. Those flags that we're looking at that are above the screen are just totally limp.
And as we get some information on our wheelchair leader on the women's side, that's Kendall Gretsch. She's currently our leader on the women's side. Ian Butler on the citizens race for the AA wave. Molly Gerbill for the female leader right now for the AA wave. And Sanborn right there as you see on screen.
5K mark, 15:37, just about 31 minutes.
Jared Ottman still in the background. I wouldn't say he's out of it yet. I mean, we still have a long way to go. We're only halfway, but that lead is definitely increased. On camera, it's a little bit deceiving. Correct.
Yes.
But when you've broken away and you're the person that's been dropped, it feels like a lot further. Even if it's 3 or 4 or 5 steps, it can feel a lot further.
And this is where you do look around on the corners to judge, you know, how much you've either gained or lost. And there you can see around that corner. He didn't look around. So he's still feeling good, and now you get a sense of how much his lead really is. It looks to me like it's about 20 meters, 20 yards.
Howie Sanborn's past the 5-mile mark, so he'll be making that turn on to Folsom, where he'll head back south on Folsom and make his way towards the stadium, which we will greet him here at the finish.
And my feeling on this race has always been, you really want to have a lead at that 6-mile point at the bottom of the hill. Because especially in the wheelchair, it's really hard to gain anything back on a hill. And it's on the flats and on the downhills that you do this. So if you have any lead, you know, that's maybe 30 yards at the 6-mile point, you feel pretty good. It doesn't mean you slow down and you're trying any less. It's almost a stimulus. You say, okay, I'm really going. Let's see how fast I can go here.
And from my recollection, I don't really have any sense of it, of having people, you know, right together as they've come into the stadium. It's almost always broken away on Folsom as they move down that last 800 meters, because they kind of know, hey, I don't want to leave it till the end. It's a bit tricky to navigate this final turn when you're going all out and you're sprinting, or you're on a wheelchair and you're really trying to come in really quickly. And so they like to break it away and set that tone, but you never know. Looks like that gap right there to me is gone. So
well, I was wrong.
That's Ian Butler and Jared Ottman, who are now back together. They've passed the halfway mark.
And there we go.
Interesting. So Jared now has moved into the lead. Jared Ottman out of Broomfield. Copy that. We're trying to, again, as we mentioned, folks, we're getting information as we go through this, and it's, you know, to read their numbers while they're on the press truck and search who they are, because in advance we don't really have a great idea aside from those of just, you know, basic registration. But it looks like it's Josh Romine is our leader, Josh Romine. So out of Highlands Ranch. So Jared, it was in the mix, but he is not our leader. That's Josh Romine is who our leader is. Our wheelchair leader and soon-to-be winner is about to come into the stadium. That's Howie Sanborn out of Colorado Springs. So we will wait for him to come down the ramp just momentarily. His time will be just over 24 minutes. Very good time for this morning. We'll jump back and forth to our citizens race and back to our wheelchair division as we want to make sure we give everybody their due this morning. But the men's race is heating up, I would say, the best way to put it.
Yeah. And there we go.
Mr. Howie Sanborn out of Colorado Springs has made his way to the Folsom Stadium floor. Let's bring him home. Congratulations, Howie. Great morning, great effort. Really was no contest from early on. Made a statement and has proven that he is your 2023 champion.
Well done.
We'll get an idea of Katja Stokely, who's, Kendall Gretsch out of Colorado Springs, who was our leader for the female side in the wheelchair division. We'll see where she is as we bring her into the stadium shortly. But back to the men's race. Now it's broken up. They're going up that hill at Casey, by Casey Middle School.
There's the hill.
Josh Romine, he's a college student that from our notes here that we're trying to dig through, and it looks like he's out of Duke.
Ha.
However, 2021 was a Mountain Vista High School runner. So Mountain Vista is one of the powerhouses here in Colorado in terms of high school running, and they don't shy away from hard training, I guess is the best way to put it down in Mountain Vista. So for Josh to come up here after his what would be his freshman or sophomore year at Duke, and Ian is not giving up.
No.
Or giving in, I guess is the best way to put it.
And Duke has a great history in running, and so the fact that he's running here really speaks to how well he's going to develop. But it looks like he's going to run at least around 31 minutes, and that will be good whether he wins or not.
Now, I wouldn't say that the rest of the pack is out of it either. So it's funny you mentioned Ian downhill running. He rolled him right on the downhill, but then now as it's starting to flatten out just a little bit, they'll make that left-hand turn on Spruce. Then it looked like he just gained another few steps right away.
Yeah, and then there's someone coming up in third.
Yeah, right at this point you would say, oh, now Ian needs to be conscientious of holding on to second place the way that gap looks right now.
Oh. Good race.
Okay, now we have our first female, Kendall Gretsch, it looks like, as she's in the stadium and gonna make that final right-hand turn to the finish line. Let's help her finish it up.
Way to go.
Congratulations, our first two finishers, our fastest two finishers of the day. 2023 champion on the women's side.
That's great. So, well.
Okay, back to our men's race. They're down on Pearl Street now, so they're not quite to the 5-mile mark, but they are well into the race. This is when it's hard. This is when you're feeling every slight move, and you're ready to make just enough of that break to where you don't feel like you have to continue to press quite as hard. But there's your top three. And Ian looks like he is now being closed down on for third. That's Ben Schneiderman, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, out of Colorado Springs. He's in third. He graduated from the School of Mines in 2019 and from Liberty High School. So again, altitude trained.
Sure.
Went to college at altitude, so he's comfortable with these effort levels. But now we have a race. Up front, it looks like Josh is definitely pulling away, but second and third are not. They're not out of it.
And as you said, the way I describe it is you're on the edge. It's like being on the edge of an envelope. I don't know why I use the term envelope, but you're just trying to be right at what we call your anaerobic threshold. You're not going into oxygen debt. You're going right up to that point. And maybe if you go over a little, you learn through interval training to then back off a little. and training in which that variation is the smallest. In other words, the less you have to sort of ease off, the more fit you are. So that's really what allows you to stay out front. It's not just distance training, it's the interval training.
Second place finisher in the wheelchair division. Apologize, we can't see quite the numbers of everyone, but that looks to be like Tyler Byers. Congratulations, Tyler. On the women's race, going back to the citizens race, A wave, Molly Grabel leads. Chelsea Burns is in second, who trains out of Boulder. We don't have a great sense of what that lead, how far that lead that Molly has, but I know that she lives and trains here in Boulder and is very fit, so she's been putting together some great races this season and this spring, and so Molly certainly would be a favorite on paper.
Five miles, 30:02, right at 5-minute pace. Oh, I'm sorry. Again, I'm looking at the wheelchair.
Right,
25:11.
You were looking at one,
Yeah,
talking about the other, but that makes total sense. You were right. 5-minute pace, 25 minutes.
I was doing the math in my head at 30. I said, no, that's 6.
Right. So 5 minutes a mile. So they are on that 31, right around 31 minutes, which is very close to what we see every year.
Usually it's a little. Oh, if they reach there at 29 minutes, they'll be a little over 30 minutes because it takes that last 0.2.
Right, and on the women's side, they're usually in the 30 to 35 minute flat range. On the men's side, closer to 31 minutes.
Now I think he's on Folsom, heading home. And that's where knowing the course. Oh, here's our finisher.
Second place on the female side. That looks like we have Amelia Perry. Congratulations, Amelia.
Okay. Families are great.
All right, really back to our citizens race. They're on Folsom now.
And this is where you don't look around. This is where you know you have a little over a mile to go.
Okay, so just to recap, Josh Romine is our leader. Romine's out of Duke University. He went to high school in Mountain Vista here in Colorado. Now it looks like we have Max Sains and Ben Schneiderman, pardon me, are our second and third place finisher. So it looks like Ian has now dropped to fourth. Max Sains is out of U.S. Air Force Academy. So a lot of college runners, they'll finish their season, they'll get through their conference meets a few weeks ago, and instead of just starting their break for the summer and beginning their preparation for the fall cross-country season, they'll just carry on their training for a few more weeks, especially if they went to high school or their parents live in Colorado. They'll come back here, train for the Boulder Bowler for a few more weeks, and really test their fitness before they move on to getting ready for the rest of their college season, which begins in the fall.
And the learning process in doing that, when you're running these open road races, not this in the elite race today, if someone from college runs it, they obviously won't do as well in that field as they would in college most of the time. So they get used to losing. That's what I'm trying to say. And yet you can still see your improvement while you're not winning. And that's very important. Because in a way, I always ask people, do you lose more than you win? And most people at the elite level will say, yep, I do. I just have to win when it's the right time.
Well, and Josh asserted himself around the 4-mile mark as they went up the steepest hill there by Casey Middle School. And just the last little glance back. So he wants to know now. They're under 800 meters. They're on Folsom by Family Student Housing. So this is when, it's uncomfortable, but he wants to know what his lead is, to know it. Does he need to save another gear to push again as he moves up the hill? He has a 3-second lead as he's going to make that right-hand turn. But, you know, I wouldn't say it's, you never know, Frank, until you're out there, until we see what happens. But that lead doesn't look insurmountable, given that the last quarter mile is very challenging.
Here we go. Another wheelchair finisher.
Looks like that looks to be Mr. Matt Davis. And if our notes are right, Mr. Davis is 56 years young.
All right.
Making that right-hand turn.
Oh,
coming up the hill.
We have a race.
We do. This is not over. This is very uncharacteristic, Frank. So I'm excited. Yeah. So they're less than a quarter mile now, folks. So this is really close.
Oh, and look at that. This is who's the better hill runner? Who's done more hill repeats? Who's done more hill repeats? Where you go up, Josh.
All right, that's Ben Schneiderman and Josh Romine. Ben Schneiderman, Josh Romine. We're about 90% sure that's correct. We're hoping so.
Here we go.
They're over 30 minutes. They're about to make the turn into the stadium. So they'll be about 30, 45. So not one of our fastest years per se, but hey, it's a good race. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And that looks like Ben now. Ben Schneiderman has taken the lead. Well, he really asserted himself that last quarter mile up that hill, so he knew what he was doing. He measured himself. We didn't see him on screen until about the 5 mile mark when he passed Ian Butler, and now he is really turning it home. This is going to be your Citizens Champion for 2023, Mr. Ben Schneiderman. Second place will be Josh Romine. Great race for Josh as well. And then they will file in, some 40,000 now behind them for the next several hours. Great race to our citizens. Hey, wave.
Good finish. Good finish.
We'll try and get an eye on Molly Grabel, who's our leader. From what we saw, had a 23-second lead. So we'll keep an eye on it for her, again, as she comes into the stadium, which should be around that 34, 35-minute range. So she has the benefit of keying off of the male runners around her, which is really nice.
And someone could actually run with her. It used to be years ago that they wouldn't let you draft and have a man run along with you. There we go. Here she is, I think.
No, not quite yet. Not quite yet.
No.
So she has a 37-second lead now, so well in front. So it doesn't look like that's going to be a close contest for our female leader. She's coming up on the 6 mile mark, so she's getting there.
Here we go.
Well, Frank, if you're running 32:30 at altitude, you're training. You know,
you really are.
These individuals are training, folks, so they're working hard.
Yes, many of the women around, when they start running a little under 33, they're getting really better, and then 32 and under, then they're on their way if they can improve from there.
So Molly, who went to the University of Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, did not go to the University of Colorado, but that sounded good at the time. But does live in Boulder. How about that? All right, she lives and trains in Boulder. We will try and pick her out as best we can when she comes into the stadium floor. Given the congestion on the course, it's impossible for us to have cameras at every turn or on the press truck, so it's hard to have our lead individual picked out. Molly went to Oregon. Okay, there we go. I was close, and it was close.
Well, in terms of colleges that compete very well in track and field,
there you
were
go.
Close.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on 34 minutes, so we should be seeing Molly here There we go. She is on the stadium floor. Molly Grabel out of University of Oregon, an Oregon Duck, but trains and lives here in Boulder, Colorado. She is on the stadium floor. And this is a great time, 34. She'll be under 34:30 or right around 34:30. That's right in the mix of as fast as we see on this course.
Right, because at altitude, it's at least a minute slower up here, and probably more.
There we go, Molly Grabel, your 2023 Citizens Champion. We'll get the official times as we move through this a little bit more so, but 34:35, 34:36, something like that. 34:34 is what we're seeing now. So, yeah, that's close to, actually, interestingly enough, to one of the all-time greats, a legend here in Colorado. Miss Melody Fairchild ran 34:34.
I think she was in high school then.
She was, which you know, she was the high school record. First high school to run under 10 minutes in the 2 mile.
Right.
So she was no slouch. She also went to the University of Oregon.
And came back, and now she's a wonderful coach and mentor in many ways.
All right, well, we've made it through the first part of the race, the wheelchair division, and the A wave for our men's and women's, and we have 40,000 folks that are going to be continuing on for the next several hours. We'll be back later to bring you the Professional International Team Challenge, which will take place just after 11 o'clock for the men and women. We have international runners from all over the world, and followed by the Memorial Day celebration starting at noon. So hope you all stick with us. Thank you for being here, and we're excited for the rest of the day, what the rest of the day holds.
Right. Everyone is just on their best today. And as I said, it's one of those perfect days, and it's starting out very well.